Bore da pawb. Hello everybody. Welcome to my wild Welsh garden. And it's a little bit wet. I've had delivery of a parcel and you can see what's in it. It's called Monkswood. And this one is a native to the UK. Now, I was put onto it by Annie from Cyrydwen Cottage Diaries. She's a fellow gardener in Wales, but further north near Machynlleth. And it's related, look at this, caution, poisonous. They do make it clear that every bit of the plant is poisonous and say to plant it where pets and children won't have access to it. Well, I don't have any pets and there's plenty of places that the children can't get to. So I think it's ideal for my garden because slugs don't like it either. I don't know whether it's poisonous to them or they just don't like the taste. So yeah, I thought it would be absolutely ideal for my garden. And it looks like they're little kind of tubers, sort of bare root, tubery things. That looks like the root there, and that's the stem. And I think there's quite a few in here. Oh, that's exciting. Yes, Roger loved delphiniums and he grew them and he went to great lengths to protect them from the slugs because anybody who's tried to grow delphiniums will know that the slugs just love them. And he'd sowed some seeds the year before we moved. And they were little plants when we moved and I planted them after he died. I planted them in the garden and yeah, I don't know what happened, but the slugs didn't eat them. I don't know whether, Roger had something to do with it. He was thinking that he wanted me to enjoy the delphiniums that he'd sowed, but yeah, they didn't get eaten by the slugs. And the thing about delphiniums is they don't last for very long. They last for a few years, and then so each year since I've been here, there's been less and less, and last year there weren't any. So, and I thought, well, I'm not going to try them again because the slugs will just eat them. So I haven't. And then I heard about Monkswood and I thought, well, yeah, why not? Give it a go, see what happens. So here we are. It also says, please plant immediately. Well, I can't plant them immediately because the ground isn't prepared. So, and it's raining today, but it's forecast dry later in the week. So I'll put them in a pot with some compost and then I'll plant them out later in the week when the weather's a bit better. And in the meantime, I'll just show you some of the birds that have come back into the garden since I started feeding again. So the promised fine day has arrived, and here I am at the top of the garden. And I've got a long list of things that I want to do today or over the next few days. Yes, I do have to be careful. I don't get too enthusiastic in making a long list and not getting even a quarter of them done. But I've been very encouraged by my visit to Knepp about what I can do with my, well, what I would have called weeds, but are volunteer plants that have arrived of their own accord. I've not planted them. So what the workshop at Knepp showed me is that, yeah, I can take as many of the volunteer plants out of here as I want, really. I can be a herbivore and select them out. And I have two plants that volunteer in my garden rather more than I would like them to. And that's the wild strawberry and the little willow herb. In terms of the willow herb, it's rather like shutting the door after the horse has gone, because I think all the seeds have blown away, but they've probably blown out into the countryside or into somebody else's garden. So that's okay. And the seeds from the surrounding countryside and other people's garden have blown into mine. So I don't know that it's going to make any difference to the germination rate next year. And over there in that corner, there's quite a lot of wild strawberry. So I'm going to pull quite a lot of that up. Maybe not all of it, but quite a lot of it. Because this is what happens with a wild strawberry, which is actually what happens with a cultivated one, is you get the parent plant here, and then it produces these runners, and every so often it grows these little new baby plants, and you end up very, very quickly with a bed just full of wild strawberries. And then that then becomes a monoculture, and that reduces biodiversity. So the rule is, if there's too much of something, then you selectively remove it. And there's some baby ones that have grown over the edge of the bed here. And then, of course, they would colonise the paths. Well, I don't mind them on the paths. So I might leave those that have actually taken root in the path and in the corners. And there's quite a big patch under here, under my favourite chair. And they're not going to do any harm, so I think I might leave them there. And while I'm here, I thought I'd just show you this fabulous creeper, which is just lovely. And another thing that I'm going to do today is to find somewhere to put this lovely posh custom built hedgehog box. Well, you might ask, why have I got one of these? And it's a long story, but basically somebody was giving them away and asked me if I'd like one, and I said, well, of course. The thing is, I do have a box in my garden that's behind the greenhouse, and a hedgehog did hibernate in it a few years ago, but not since. And as you know, my hedgehog that I was feeding in the spring deserted me this summer, so I haven't had any hoggy visitors. So yeah, I don't really want this in my garden, but I'm going to go over the road and see if I can find a suitable place over there. So this is my over the road. This is my little bit of land that I just leave for the wildlife. I haven't done anything in here this summer other than pull the bindweed off the trees because it was in danger of pulling them over. So I'm going to go and see if there's a suitable place in the hedge there. Most of the bindweed's died now. And the plan is, of course, as the trees grow up, it will shade out the bindweed. But down here, next to this little oak tree here, there's this little space. There's an oak tree there, and then there's some willow, which has been pretty well flattened by the bindweed. Poor thing. But down there, I think, is a space for the hedgehog box. I'll go and get it. So there it is, in situ. and I've covered it with the chopped up little conifer that I removed from my garden a few weeks ago to disguise it from the road, really, so it can't be seen from the road at all. And I've been down to the river and collected some leaves to put around the entrance so that if a hedgehog decides it wants to live in there, it can drag the leaves into the house. They are a little bit wet. So I've just laid some out in a few containers in the greenhouse to dry. And then when they're dried, I'll put them in the box and there'll be a nice dry, hoggy, hibernating home for a hedgehog to come to if they want. And you know, I'm tired and it's coffee time. So yeah, I'm going to have a cup of coffee and have a sit down. And I haven't even started on the grazing of the volunteer plants yet. So I'm just going to sit here in the secret garden, drink my coffee and just see what's going on. Right, so I've had my caffeine fix and I'm ready to get on now, but before I get on with the grazing, I'm going to plant some more crocus bulbs. So I'll have something nice to look at the end of the winter, and any early pollinators that emerge from hibernation will have some pollen and nectar to eat. I've already planted some in these containers and I've ordered some horticultural grit to go on the top. But I've got another packet here. It's only from my local garden centre, but I did check that they don't use nicotinamides on their bulbs, so I'm not going to be poisoning the bees when they emerge from hibernation next year. Before I was a wild gardener, I used to have pots which had summer bedding in the summer and then winter bedding in the winter with bulbs for the spring. But this year I've planted some of them up with native plants. This one here on the owl has got bird's foot trefoil. And the thing is, it's just going to sit there looking green, I think. So I'm going to plant some crocuses in there. And if I lift the plants up, I can see that there's plenty of space in between the bird's foot trefoil plants, and I can make a hole with a dibber. I used to use that for planting leeks on the allotment, and then in the hole I just pop the crocus the right way up and then fill the hole, and Bob's your uncle. So I think I'll get as many in there as I can. And then I'm going to do something similar with this one. This is under the hedge and it was supposed to be a kind of focal point, but because I've let the hedge grow thick and wild, it's kind of got a little bit lost. So I'm going to pull it out and find somewhere more strategic in the garden and pot that up with crocuses as well. So I've brought it out here and put it in front of the buddleia, planted it up with crocuses, and I also found another pot of bird's foot trefoil which I've put in front of it. And the reason for so much bird's foot trefoil is that I'm trying to encourage common blue butterflies into my garden, because this is the larval food plant of the common blue butterfly. So hopefully I will have lovely crocuses in the spring and common blue butterflies in the summer. I do actually think that planting crocuses at the top of the Swansea Valley shows a sort of unrealistically positive, sort of naive outlook on life, really, because yeah, sometimes the weather up here is so what can I say, not really conducive to crocuses, that they hardly get a chance to flower. You know, as soon as the buds are formed, they're spoilt by the rain. But I think I'm going to be unrealistically positive. I'm going to hope for a nice, mild, dry February, and I can have lovely flowers to look at, and the early pollinators can have some nice pollen and nectar to eat. Shemai Pow Beto, hello again everybody. It's actually the next morning now. Yes, I got kind of distracted yesterday, and yeah, I'll tell you what happened. I'd started to pull the little willow herbs out of this area here. This is actually the hibernaculum that I made earlier this year, and it's been really nicely colonised by evening primrose, ragwort and foxgloves. And anyway, I was thinking, well, if I'm generating this compost, I really need to kind of sort my compost bins out and move them sort of through the process, through the different stages, through the sort of compost conveyor belt. So that's what I did. These are my posh new compost bins down by the side of the polytunnel. So I moved all the new compost from there into this bin, but before that I moved what was in this bin into that bin. So that's the compost that's been composting the longest, which will be able to go onto the garden next year. So those two bins are tucked away nicely for the winter, just to be left alone. And then I've got this nice empty space for any new compost that I'm going to generate. And then I was officially too tired to do anything else. So I just sat in the summer house and yeah, that was it for the day really. But today is another day and it's dry again, so I'm going to get back to grazing this bed. Well, that was a lot more work than I was expecting it to be. I ended up finding a peony that I'd forgotten about, and I decided earlier that I was going to remove it, so I took that out, and there was a lot of crocosmia around the water butt there, and I've taken as much of that out as I can. And now it looks like a couple of young pigs have been rootling around in here for an hour or so, and just left it ready for me to plant some other plants in. Because this area here is where the monkswood is going to go. I put them in these pots earlier in the week, but not today. And yeah, I'm pretty much done really. I think I've done enough for today. I shall have to come and up here and do something about the pond at some point over the winter. But other than that, I'm just going to leave this bed as it is now. And there's plenty of cover for invertebrates and plenty of invertebrates, hopefully, for the birds to find to eat. So, thanks for joining me again in my wild Welsh garden. Thanks for watching the video. And I'll see you in the next one. Bye! Hwyl fawr!